Good morning.
Good morning.
Nice to see everyone. We're a little steamy this morning. Really, with the yard sale, to have the windows closed is a little better. I'm easily distracted. So I'd like to continue this week talking about a path of liberation in the Buddha Dharma, which is known as the six perfections. And the term here, the path, is very important. This is fundamental to Buddhist spiritual practice, that there is a path. It's not just jump from here to here, but that there's a kind of walking that we're doing. And that we're not just trying to move from one place to another place, but how we move is what's important. Moving from one place to the other place, the only way that we can do it is to move in a particular way. It's not that the ends justify the means in any way. The means actually are what the means are the source of the ends. So the way that we walk is what is focused on. And this is important in a lot of different ways, but one of the ways it's important is that we tend to be idealists in some way, which is great. Inspiration to have a better life, to be kinder, to find out really what is this beauty of a human existence. Well, I'm here. That all, you need to have some idealism to deal with that, to engage those questions. But because we affix to those ideals, we oftentimes think what my job is to get out of what I'm in right now and to get into something else. Right? I'm going to escape the causes and conditions of this life the way that it is now, and I'm going to find freedom in some other place. Right? Now, sometimes that's necessary. Sometimes we're in a kind of place where really the causes and conditions need to be the focus of change. But even that, we have to do in a way that is in alignment with the Dharma. Otherwise, the karma that comes from it will make whatever place we are pretty much the place we just came from, right? In one way or another. So we focus on, really from the earliest teachings of Buddhism, this idea of a path. In Sanskrit, it's called marga. It is the fourth noble truth of Buddhism. So in some of the oldest teachings we have, the Four Noble Truths. The last one is called marga, or path. And I've said many times this word in Japanese, ayumu, which is a very beautiful word. And it means to step along. Has a nice sound too, ayumu. It kind of feels that, like you're stepping along. So my teacher would always say to step along the Buddha path. Butsudo ayumu is how it would be said in Japanese. And that's the focus. Where's my foot going to go? As I put it down, where's the next foot going to, this foot's going to come up, it's going to go somewhere. And as I pay attention to this, then the traveling on the path really becomes possible. Now, sometimes there's probably putting both of your feet together and jumping as hard as you can, and maybe sticking it, maybe not. But that could also be part of the path, but in this way is, talking about this consistency. The perfections, as they're usually translated, also means crossing over. I really prefer that, although it's just so many more syllables. And the perfections kind of has a ring to it. But the six crossing overs, the crossing over the river of, that is between the realm of suffering and the realm of nirvana. So that's one of the images that comes up in many religious traditions or spiritual traditions, but in Buddhism, on one side is suffering, the other side is nirvana. So what is it to cross that river? And these six perfections, they are generosity, ethics, patience or forbearance, zeal or vigor, meditation, and wisdom. Now, there are other formulations of the perfections. In the Theravadan school, for example, they usually use a set that's 10. And some Mahayana schools use that as well. But this set of 6 is easier to remember. And you can pile in some of those other things inside of, like, expedient means is one of the 10 perfections. You can probably fit that into generosity if you get thinking creatively. But anyway, it's a little bit like a pie. You could cut it a lot of different ways. It's really all the same teaching, but the teaching oftentimes helpful if we can cut it up and think about it in different ways. And one of the things, it's not that those 6 just stand they all stand in their own place, it's true, but the 6th one, the perfection of wisdom, is what animates the whole path. The first 5, those are all very, very important, but what makes them crossing overs, or what makes them a practice of liberation, is when they're animated by wisdom. And so oftentimes when I've given teachings on the 6 perfections, I don't focus on the wisdom. I say, generosity, don't worry about it, just do it. Right? Just do it. And don't worry about doing it right. And don't worry about doing it perfectly. And don't worry about what it is at all. Just do it. And you'll get feedback about how you did it wrong. Almost immediately. You'll realize a little bit like, oh, I gave this gift, but it wasn't really generous. Like I was sort of fishing for some thank yous or whatever. I was fishing for some kind of moral superiority, or I was fishing for a closeness with this person or something by giving a gift. Doesn't mean the generosity wasn't important, doesn't mean that it didn't have some good effect, but it also has some hook in it, right? And so you just feel for that. That's a very simple practice. Be generous in whatever way that you understand that to be, right? And then look for the hooks. Look for the way in which you're not doing it in a totally liberating way. You're doing it in some kind of stuck way. So that's the way I usually teach about it, but this time I've been trying to teach about it the other direction, focusing on the wisdom piece. And so I want to talk a little more about that and then ask what you're experiencing, and we can get a little conversation going on perhaps. So this prajna that animates, or wisdom, the 6th perfection, which animates this practice, is usually translated as wisdom, but wisdom is kind of a funny word. Wisdom kind of feels like something I could pile up. It feels like something I could accrue to myself. But in a Buddhist sense, prajna is really seeing in a different way. It's about how we see. And to be able to see clearly is a way that we would talk about what the function of wisdom is. So oftentimes the mother of the Buddhas, who is here just above me to the Buddha's left, she's referred to as the Buddha Eye, the name of our temple. Buddha Eye, Buddha Mother. That's the epithet for prajna in Chinese. So the way that we're seeing, the clear seeing, that animates the capacity to be able to practice generosity, ethics, patience, vigor, meditation. It animates them as liberating practices, not simply good practices. Right? And it's good to do good things, but it's only good to do good things. This is a very strong teaching, particularly within the Zen school. It was the Bodhidharma who was the character who brought the teachings in our school from India to China. It was famous for saying, it's better than having something good, or better than doing something good, is to have nothing at all. But he also looks very grumpy. On that side over there. So I don't think that way. I think, well, maybe I do. But that doesn't mean you can't enjoy the thing that's good. I think that's when you hear him say that. You think like he means get rid of the things that are good. Right? And maybe that's also true. But I don't think we can enjoy the things that are good. But the deal is to find out how those things that are good also lead towards liberation. And if we can include that bit, then all of these good things become a different kind of ally than just making life better. So this clear seeing, which again is in the chant that we chant every Sunday, the great, how do we say in English?
Heart of Great Perfect Wisdom.
Thank you. Heart of Great Perfect Wisdom Sutra, right at the very beginning, Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva, clearly seeing that all 5 aggregates are empty, just bracket that part, thus relieved all suffering. So the clear seeing of Avalokitesvara, which is the Bodhisattva of compassion, that clear seeing is what we're talking about when we're talking about prajna or wisdom. And so I've been giving 5 flavors of that the past couple weeks. So I know this got a little confusing last week. There's 6 perfections, right? Which again, generosity. If you can't remember any of them, just remember generosity. That one pretty much is it will lead to everything else. Generosity, ethics, patience, vigor, and meditation. And then wisdom is the 6th one. So we're talking about that path practice, but the clear seeing, I was giving 5 flavors of the clear seeing. Okay? By the way, these kinds of lists, this is Buddhism. Yeah, Buddhism loves the lists. It comes from a South Asian spiritual ecosystem in which lists are loved. You know, the 5 this, 6 that, 3 that, 4 that, and everything. So what's really cool is then they start just like mixing up with each other, and you can use them as you want. So the 5 flavors that I was giving you are this clear seeing that realizes things are already broken, was the term that I was using. That things are not permanent. And it's not just that they're not permanent in time, they're not even what we think they are in the moment. This is easier to understand with people than it is with objects. We have this nasty habit of thinking that objects have this kind of permanence to them. No comment on the current but we have a habit of thinking of them as kind of static, but at least living beings, in particular other humans, we realize that they're dynamic, right? And you could think that you know someone, maybe I know Carl, right? And I know Carl's name, but if I thought that Carl's just always Carl, as I imagine Carl to be, of course that wouldn't be true, right? So that's also what this means. Like Carl is already not Carl. That's why he's Carl. That's the kind of phrasing within the Prajnaparamita teachings. So one is that all things will break. They will break apart. Carl's constituent parts will turn into other things at some time, and mind stream will continue on in some way, right? So we're aware of that impermanence, but also aware that the way that we're meeting something, the way that we're grabbing onto, the way that we're naming anything is only a partial understanding of what it is. It's provisional, not permanent. The second flavor I was giving is interdependence. That whatever I'm meeting, whatever kind of thing, we know that it's made up of all sorts of things. So this teaching stick, for example, it's called a kotsu. If I start thinking about where this come from, I will lead to stardust, right? It would be like the only reason it's here. I mean, actually, I remember exactly where I bought the piece of wood, which I'm not such in the habit of buying wood, but I hadn't carved something like this before, and I wanted to carve one for an important mentor or teacher to me. And so I went to anyone ever used to go to the woodworking store out on Coburg Road? Mm-hmm. What was that called? Woodcrafters, yeah, woodcrafters. And I bought some scrapers there, and I bought this piece of cherry, which I'm very fond of cherry wood. And so I bought this piece of cherry, and then I started to make this kotsu. It wasn't going so well, and then Kogen, which many of you know, gave me a piece of yew wood, which I ended up carving a kotsu for one of the very important teachers for me and for this temple, Kyogen Karlsson Roshi. Anyway, and then this sat around for a while, and then I got those scrapers, which are made out of stainless steel. Not sure where the steel came from, but if I could think about it, I might be able to figure out who fashioned those, who was the clerk that I bought the things from, how did I get there? So very quickly, it just turns into infinite causes and conditions, which turned into this. For us to even see this thing and to consider it to have some significance or value, or even to pick it out as worthy of observing, is a whole nother world of things, ideas, relationships that go into this stick being here. So interdependence, if we pay attention to that, that's another way of clear seeing. It's called emptiness sometimes, but we can see that all things are interconnected. The third flavor I was giving is that there's no place to stand. So when we're seeing clearly, it's not that we have a place where we're solid and then we see, oh, the kotsu, it's made up of all these different causes and conditions. It's so interdependent out there. This one means that like when I actually see it, I go, oh, I'm involved. And anything I'm perceiving, any perception that's happening, I'm completely involved in it. Which means I don't have any possibility of ejecting myself from the situation, that I'm responsible to whatever that is. So that was the third type of clear seeing I was talking about. The fourth is suchness. That things just simply are. There's not much more to say about that. If you take something like this, and pay attention to it. Flowers are great for this, right? And we have great history of this. This is Shakyamuni Buddha. One day didn't say anything in his sermon. He just picked up a flower and twirled it. And Mahakashapa, one of his lead disciples, smiled. That's like the founding story of the Zen tradition. So you can do this with flowers. Buddha's holding them up all over the place for you this time of year with these earthen hands and offering you that kind of insight that Mahakashapa had. And sometimes when you see them and they're just exactly what they are. Do you know what I'm talking about? And then oftentimes, even the time like right before they're going to like totally open up, they even seem more like they are, just like they are. And then sometimes as they're sort of like, dropping petals. And then there's that right in between place where they're just, I'm a flower, whatever it is. So that quality where things are they just are. And you're not trying to, I need to get a dozen of those and take them to somebody or whatever it is. It's just there. And your relationship is one of kind of stillness, a stillness of the heart. And you can see them clearly and you realize that they're not really outside. So that's fourth flavor. And then the fifth flavor is a true meeting. Fifth flavor is that there's no observation. There's a touch. There's a touch. So like if you have a pet and maybe you notice your pet got injured, and you don't say, it's just as it is, right? Like that's not the way to see it. But that quietness of heart, which can know that the cat is not outside. I picked a cat. And you go to them. You touch. You know that they're wounded in some way, so they're not easy to convince that your touch is really what would be helpful. And it may not be helpful. That's why I chose a cat, right? And so you're in this kind of meeting where they are their completely own being, unpredictable. And your job is to respect the boundary, but also not back off with your awareness. Because they can't just tell you, this is how I'm feeling, this is what's going on, okay, let's go to the doctor, blah, 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 blah. You have to do this other kind of thing, which is like a deep presence to be able to figure out where to go. Now, that's not only true of cats, it's true of all kinds of things, kids, of course, friends, the grass, anything. So these kind of 5 flavors of clear seeing are what I'm making an argument here are make generosity, make ethics, make vigor, make patience, make meditation possible, and make them really a liberating practice as opposed to just something good. So I want to talk a little bit about generosity with you, not just to you. And I'm curious what people are experiencing. The last couple of years, weeks, I've been encouraging the assembly to take up these 5 ways of seeing things and then see how it affects your experience of generosity. So I'm interested what people have found, and even if you can't connect it with clear seeing, that's totally fine. But if you had any experience of generosity, remember, generosity isn't just when you give something, although that's the easiest identifiable way. It's also when you receive something. It also can be simply an attitude. It can be all kinds of different things. I'm curious if anyone has had something which is kind of locked in the past couple of weeks, generosity-wise. Mm-hmm.
I am on a group online where neighbors and the friendly share
Mm-hmm.
stuff for free, and you just post or ask, and then people figure out the logistics. And for the past month, I haven't really been posting because I was saving it for the yard sale. And then I felt guilty because I felt like I was like stealing from one of my communities to give to another.
Oh, well, you made the right choice. I'm just teasing you. Yeah.
And of course, it's all going to good use, and
Yeah.
you know, no one actually has any claim on it. But it was just interesting for me how, like, changing a habit really had an impact.
Yeah. What, how, when you're working with that and thinking about those different kinds of ways of thinking about emptiness, did anything kind of appear to you in your deliberations about that? It's okay if it didn't. I'm just curious.
Well, I realized that something that wasn't as like selfless for me, something I was attached to, is that it's a way that I like keep things in circulation, right? And so like the benefit of generosity to me is like, oh, this thing still has a life, but I don't want it here anymore.
Yeah.
And so there was also a little bit of backup, and so then I was able to reflect how my generosity can also be self-serving.
Yeah. You got kind of a plan for this thing.
Yes.
Yeah, where it's going to go, what it's going to do, which just seems pretty respectful to the thing, and to the understanding that things are interdependent and reusing things. But then I think what you're saying is really interesting. What's this? There's still this kind of subtle grasp, you know, and maybe that part that we realize that this thing is already broken, that this thing already, you know, is not what I think it is. That might be part of the medicine of the emptiness teaching, a little bit of not grabbing on so tight. I think I told this story 2 weeks ago too, but I'll tell again because it's one of my favorites. Layman Pang, who's one of the most famous Zen ancestors in China, and his whole family were quite these radical Zen folks. And one of the stories is he put all this stuff on a raft and rowed it out to the middle of this lake and sank the raft, and then he swam back in. And we swam back in, someone came to Layman Pang and said, Layman Pang, you could have given that all the poor people. And Layman Pang said, poor people have enough problems. What are they going to do with all my stuff? And of course, you know, perhaps it would have been helpful to some people, but also the recognition that I think now, especially with so much abundance, that do people realize this, that many stores like Goodwill and St. Vincent's and things, for at least a period, they stopped taking any clothes. Okay. So next time you're on Amazon ordering that shirt you don't need, and you're reminding yourself, oh well, I donate it, so it's all good, and I got enough points from my donating. I got enough moral points from my donating that now I think I can sort of shop without moral weight. That's not actually what's happening. So much stuff. People figure, oh, you can just buy, what do they call it, fast fashion? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so now everything's filled up. And they were trying to figure out what to do with the fibers. They were selling away just the shirts to split up into turn to fibers. Mm-hmm. Same thing when we tried to take wooden furniture after the yard sale a couple of years to donate. The St. Vinny's and Goodwill wouldn't take any wooden furniture. Mm-hmm. And what I heard when they told me that was IKEA. Right? So now people buy tons and tons and tons of very inexpensive furniture, maybe nicely designed to make me feel Scandinavian, which you wouldn't want to feel Scandinavian. And then people dump it very quickly, right? So we're in this place where there's just so much material. Actually, what we need to do is I believe one thing is really realize that these things, we're dealing in things that are already broken. And if we can do that, the way that we touch them can change a little bit. Yeah. Sorry for too much political commentary, but it's been on my mind a little bit. Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else? Things you've been working with?
Yeah. Listening and asking and listening and sharing. So basically, I just had a conversation before I got here, and I listened. I shared a lot, but I listened, and I feel like that's important. And then asking how they are, and then listening, and then continue to ask how they are, and to really listen to that. And then I realized how sometimes in the right context there's an importance of sharing how I am, because it feels like it's something that they get to maybe do for me, or that they get to maybe take their mind off of you know, what they're talking about,
Mhm.
and feel like they're having a sense of agency and supporting others.
Yeah.
And so there's that, but also there's that space between the listening and sharing and the listening and asking.
Mhm.
That's whatever that space in between is that we can like hold for each other.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. Are there any of these forms of clear seeing that particularly resonate with you in that? Any that you can kind of identify?
What were the 5 ones again?
The already broken, interdependence, no place to stand, suchness, and the true meeting.
I feel like the interdependence for sure, and also like the suchness.
Yeah.
The suchness is like, this is together, and it's not together because there is no things to bring together, because it's already is. It is.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing I heard. That's great. Another thing I heard in what you said that was the chord that was going for me is when you said about sharing about yourself. And I think one of the things that happens when we're trying to make room, like for listening, for example, is such an important practice, the generosity of listening. And there can be a little imbalance in it where we're trying to erase ourself. And that's a good sign of trying to find a place to stand. And the place to stand is the place of no me. And that's a place that if we're practicing generosity, almost for sure you'll start trying to do that. Oh, I'll be selfless. Like that's what we think we're doing when we're being generous. And being selfless is not bad necessarily, but it's good, and it's only good, and it has this karma to it. It's kind of self-protective in a way where a true meeting becomes difficult to happen because we're sort of hiding out in this cave of the idea that I'm a no self, right? And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. But what you said is at that point you feel like it's important to also share about yourself. Now it's like, oh, right? So we're not separate and we're separate. Both are true at the same time. And that allows for a different kind of generosity than simply hollowing myself out, thinking that that's noble or something. Oftentimes it's a protective mechanism, a kind of weird protective mechanism, but yeah. Thank you. Someone over here? Mm-hmm.
I had a confusing conundrum come up. I got a birthday card in the mail from a childhood friend that we played in the neighborhood all the time together, and our birthdays were a day apart, so we always, celebrated that. So in it was a tract, "Are you going to heaven?" And I know that she has a personal relationship with Jesus, and I decided this time, I called her and said, thank you so much for your card. And we talked about our families, and I said, and I just wanted to let you know that I'm a practicing Buddhist, and I kind of went on a little bit from there. It's kind of hard to say, after that. Yeah. But the conversation then got really short. Oh, okay, all right, well, and it brought to mind, and I think I kind of stuttered and stammered some more and tried to make it okay that we weren't that different, that we are both walking a path, but it fell flat because there was the truth on that side, and then there was not the truth on this side, and my perception of her, right? Yeah. So I called my sister for some reason, like, this happened, and she immediately just started blasting, like, how could you know the truth? And da-da-da-da-da. So I found myself in the position of defending, which is kind of like my alter ego, which is why I left Catholicism or Christianity, because our way is the only way, and it's really hard for me to wrap my head around that one. And so I found myself defending, and all this, my friend's right to, and I even said to my sister, have you ever heard the expression, if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, no, I've never heard that. Which doesn't surprise me.
You said, welcome to the true path.
It doesn't surprise me, but I said, like, as soon as we have a perception, you know, then we have to kind of knock it out or question it. And so I'm still in this conundrum of, like, living with my friend, just, you know, like my old friend, who we don't have a lot of contact with anymore, but still, I don't want to be converted. I want to gasho, and but I still want to, you know, have the conversation. So anyway, I guess that was kind of my thoughts about, like, generosity.
Yeah.
So, and I think it would be more kind of like the real meaning or something, you know, kind of like, just touch it, you know, you don't know what to do. It's just, and it's so reflective of the whole freaking world right now, in these two you know, in these whole two camps. And, you know, but if she didn't ever want to talk to me again, because I have my belief, then, you know, I just have to let that, anyway, it goes on and on.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. This is practice of paramitas. I mean, really, if you're practicing them, you're going to find a lot of conundrums. So, a couple of things I hear in what you're saying. One is that you're really practicing this clear seeing, which is no place to stand. You're trying to figure out what are the implications of not carving out the right place and then looking at things from the right place, which is one of the deep implications of this teaching of emptiness, that there's no place to stand. We don't get to carve out the moral high ground. There's no such thing as moral high ground. True, deep moral interaction is a seeing in which there is you are you, I am me, and there's no outside or inside. Both are true at the same time. And so to meet in that way is what the perfections are asking us to do. So to meet with someone, you know, like if I get a card like that, so I'm not nearly as brave. I just go, well, okay, I can take the good that's in it. Oh, thank you for wishing me well, and put it aside. I don't really want to engage the conversation. And so, you know, I kind of have a place to stand. And the place to stand is, well, I can appreciate what's good about it, and I'm just going to hang out there. But it cuts something off in a subtle way. Do I actually, you know, is this my friend? Even we don't have much of a connection now. Is there some other place? And probably every time you can't call them up and have this conversation or whatever. But what's at the root of our intention there? Is it just sort of self-preservation? If I look at myself, I'd say, yeah, probably. Now I'm a Buddhist priest and everything, and a lot of people know that, so I don't get those kind of cards so much anymore. But it's, you know, it's like there's this sort of subtle self-preservation in it. But no, you took this step, you know, and then you called your sister, which is great, you know, and so you continue to turn that over, right? Like, what is this? How do I truly meet someone? And how do I show that I care about them, but also not just be kind of like, feel like I can't express my own beliefs too, because I know that there's this complication. So that is exactly, you know, a lot of times people think clear seeing is going to mean like, oh, it's really clear what the answer is and there's no problems, etc. It's no, like, clear seeing is stuff is messed up. Really clear, if we're seeing clearly, that will be part of the quality all the time. But how do you stay, you know, in that practice of touching, but not just being carried away by the thing? Sounds like you're right in the middle of that.
And it felt like intention was, like you say, at the root of it.
Yeah.
Do you know? And sometimes it seems like that's all you're left with.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And then even examining that is like everything, you know? It's like...
Yeah. So that's a very good point. So when we talk about clear seeing, you can ask yourself, what is the source of that seeing? It's intention. Those are the words that would be laid on top of it. So for example, when we investigate this in meditation, it's one of the reasons that this school in meditation doesn't give us a lot of things to really drive, like a particular breathing practice which you could do and kind of see the effects of, or a particular way of holding your mind or applying things. We have a little bit of that, right? But the reason that it's so loosely held is because when you can sit really and just like feel for the center of where your seeing is coming from, it's very challenging, and it is a liberating vision. Comes from that no place, not that place, but that no place, like that no place to stand. That seeing that comes from there is very direct, is very simple, and can bring you into very difficult situations in which you don't know how you're going to manage it. But when you keep coming back to that no place to stand, that seeing, the clear seeing that comes from no place to stand, then there's a miraculous thing that happens. You know? Hakuin Zenji, who's one of the great Zen masters of Japan, one of the big figures within the Rinzai tradition, he was a brush painter, and he would, a lot of these old Zen monks, they like to make a little painting, you know, and then scrawl something on it. And it's very cool. And one of my favorite from him is this 3 blind men crossing this log. And it's a like that kind of black on white ink paper. If you like this sort of thing, image search. I encourage you when you go home. Hakuin Zenji, blind men crossing the log. And so there's this log over a river, and there's these 3 blind men, and they're crossing the log. And it's amazing in that kind of painting how very little visual detail, you know, it's very quickly done, but you can feel like this kind of tension in their bodies, and their like hands are on the log, kind of crawling across. And I remember when I first saw it, it was just so impressive to me. I was like, that's it. Yeah. No place to stand. It's probably slippery. I've been over a lot of logs, over a lot of rivers, because I like that sort of thing. And I couldn't even imagine doing it with my eyes closed, right? But here, you know, that's what we're invited into. So yeah, I have no solutions, but that's my feedback. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this is a kind of interesting one, but I guess I've been thinking about generosity and stuff in connection to like physical touch.
Yeah.
It's something I struggle with, is physically touching people for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And so it's been an interesting thing to be thinking about, like what physical touch does bring between 2 people, even like a hug, or like putting your hand on somebody, or like holding somebody's hand like this. And it has been experienced for me of like feeling this more spirit of generosity, I guess, when I'm willing to like kind of, I don't know, try it out, I guess I would say. Yeah. Like I was talking to someone who's pretty much a stranger to me on the street, but they were telling me about their life. And at one point they like held my hand and they said, it's been such an honor to talk to you. And I never would have thought to hold a hand of a stranger before, and it would be something I'd be like, no. But it was a very touching moment, and I'd just be curious to hear a little about what you think about like physical touch in terms of generosity.
Yeah. So maybe I start by saying, in your story, you received something, and you gave something, and those 2 actions were inseparable from each other. And that's possible in physical touch between beings, all kinds of beings, but particularly between human beings. And it's why physical touch it's why there's so many ethics around it, because it is so immensely powerful and easily misused or not skillfully treated. And so as we explore that generosity of physical touch, to recognize how powerful it is. And in that moment that you described, and I could just feel it from you, that was something unlocked, you know. So a couple places that you might work with that. One is, I would say, You don't have to have it be just about other humans or even animate objects. So one of the worlds in Buddhism, we kind of split the worlds into three, like a list, right? Okay, so there's the three realms. One is the sensuous realm, another is the realm of form, and then there's a realm of no form. But we primarily live in the sensuous realm. And so in Buddhism, that's eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. So thoughts are also sensuous. For those of you who are synesthetes, you will be happy to do that. But all of those are kind of touching. You know, sound is kind of vibrational touching, for example. Light is a kind of a touch. We could go through that. But then if we just reduce that down to this feeling part. So we're walking around in our day a lot of times blocking out most of our sensation of physical touch. And we do that in different ways. One of the ways we do it is we let the energy come up here into our head, and then we create a picture of a world that we're walking around in, and we sort of keep the physical information to a minimum. Like bus, notice bus moving. Like that's a little piece of information. But actually probably we won't even really see the bus. We'll see some little part of the bus, and then the picture that we have of a bus in our head will be the main quality of that, and then it goes by. So the reason I'm saying all that is in that very complicated process, touch is something we shrink back from very, very quickly, and then we project these other kinds of stories onto what it is that's happening. So a really wonderful practice is to purposely work against that. It doesn't mean you have to do that all the time, but just take it up as a practice. One of my favorite is walking barefoot. If you come to the temple after that, please wash your feet before you come in. But walking barefoot, like if you're in a place, especially there's grass or kind of safe area, and you take your shoes off and you just spend time walking and feeling the ground with your feet. And as you're doing that, as you come in, you're a little bit more relaxed, and you're just feeling it, then do this in your consciousness. Flip and stop thinking that you're touching the earth, and then realize that the earth is touching you. And that actually they're always happening together. Whenever you're touching, you're being touched. And you can do that in this very straightforward ways. Trees are also so generous with this. They will you just touch them. You put your head on it. People might think you're a little weird, but this is Eugene. So they won't think you're that weird, And you can smell them. Do you ever smell oak trees? Oh my gosh, they're the best. That kind of musty, mossy smell. And then you just spend some time with with that touch. And then you can bring that to things like when you're eating, the implements that you're eating with, when you pick something up, do you actually feel the glass, then as you're receiving it. And again, not trying to set yourself into like an overly, I have to feel everything all the time or there's something wrong with me. I don't mean that at all, but just taking it up as a practice. And those places that are more identified sensually for you, that your sense gates are more open to, just spend some more time there in a little bit of slowness, and then also I'm going to use the word delicacy, like a delicate touch. Like if if I take this cup, I can just take it and drink, right? And that's fine. There's another way where I'm touching it and I feel the coolness on my fingers as I'm touching it, and then the grasping of it, it's just a little slowed down, but it's a little more like I'm actually feeling the glass. I can feel the ridges and everything that's going through. A little bit that kind of thing. So I would encourage you to practice there a lot. And then when it comes to humans, they're the same, actually. But there's a lot more ethics around it. And that's the place where, trusting your own boundaries around those kinds of things. That kind of squeeze of a hand at just the right moment can be something really important, but at another moment could really scare someone. You feel like you're being pulled, and how the touch is happening, everything.
Mm-hmm. So sometimes I get confused about who's the giver and who's the receiver. And I think maybe those are the best times of all.
Yeah.
What comes to mind is this little family that I spend time with, and my job duties are other duties as assigned, and I just go there every week and do whatever is needed to be done. I mean, sometimes I'm a prop on the floor, and children are just climbing on me and stuff, and one of them's, look at me, watch me, like, watch me, watch me, watch me, watch me. And that's what I do, and sometimes I let Mom have a good cry, and sometimes I talk Dad down from the cliff, and sometimes I do the laundry. And Mom keeps thanking me, and I keep thanking her. You know, it seems like really a nice setup. Yeah.
You know, we have a phrase for that in our meal chants. That may we realize the emptiness of the three wheels: the giver, the receiver, and the gift. So the emptiness of those three wheels means that those three wheels, the giver, receiver, and gift, again, another list, three wheels, that they are empty means that they are completely transparent. It means that they're totally a reflection of the interdependence. It means every one of those things is just what it is. The laundry is just the laundry. The cry is just the cry. The thank you is just the thank you. So all of those clear seeing things are expressed in that it's kind of like a wish that we will be able to really actualize that, to actualize the emptiness of those things. Because oftentimes we have there's some thorn in there somewhere about it. But the thorn also is a kind of generosity that the world gives back to us, that we learn, oh, I'm not doing this quite, you know, and then you can say, okay, the thorn is also not we can't separate it out. We have to pay attention to something there.
So the thorn would be any discomfort?
No, discomfort might just be, that might necessarily be a thorn. It would be more like the place where we're getting a little bit stuck. So like, say for example, this is all going along really great, like you're describing, it sounds wonderful, and then let's say the mom just stops thanking you for a while, and then you feel like, oh, she's not thanking me.
I'd be grateful if she stopped thinking.
Yeah. So that's good. But like, let's say you were saying like, oh, well, what's wrong? Like, doesn't she see what I'm doing?
No, I totally want her to stop thinking.
Exactly. But what I'm saying, that would be the kind of thing as a thorn. Like someone might feel that way. You're doing this, and then at some point you feel like, oh, there's not an appreciation. But that feeling that there's not an appreciation might be really important information. It might be, for example, that this is very common. It might be that you think you're doing this. You have a kind of pride about what you're doing. And you're not really noticing it because you're doing this really good thing. And then the non-appreciation might be that person, your sense of non-appreciation might be that person feels like maybe it's too much, or maybe it's just imbalanced in a way that they don't know how to deal with it and they're shutting down or whatever. So the thorns aren't usually things you just try to poke at and get rid of, but they're like information where you go, ooh, what is that? And my guess is that you're very subtle with those things so that they're happening in some place where there's a balance that's being achieved. Like if you ride a bike, sometimes you lean over to the right, you lean over to the left, but you know how to ride it. So that all those different feedback pieces are all happening and you're not getting stuck somewhere. So that's great.
It's really fun.
Yeah.
I'm having a good time.
Great. But sure.
Well, the example that comes to mind about giver and receiver and is in addiction recovery work. Like often, like a more experienced person will offer like a newcomer help from the position of like, this helps me too, and that coming from that position helps prevent the other person from taking on shame about needing help. So, and that's, and I find that position helpful, like to realize if I'm offering that how am I offering something to myself?
That's where the real work happens. Yeah, that's beautiful. I want to tell this one small story, and then we'll stop. I want people to think about this a little bit this week and pick it up again next week. So you know this phrase or saying we have in English. It says, "Give a person a fish and feed them for a day. Teach a person to fish and feed them for a lifetime." We have that kind of saying, right? Well, I've just read this story that I felt like is this Buddhist version of this that's really great. And the story is about Manjushri Bodhisattva, who's here to my left. Is Manjushri, when Manjushri Bodhisattva is in the form of Manjushri Bodhisattva, very high-level Bodhisattva, and but Manjushri Bodhisattva was also many, many, many kalpas ago, which is like bajillions and bajillions and bajillions and bajillions of eons ago, was a monk in the world at that time. And in this story, it's said that he went in for his alms rounds to the town one day, and he received this beautiful bowl of five fragrance dumplings. Doesn't that sound so good? 5 fragrance dumplings. And so he receives these dumplings, and the story makes you know that this is a real delicacy, right? And he's being followed by this boy who's like a beggar who lives on the street, and the boy wants some of these dumplings. So Manjushri just notices that he's following him, and he doesn't say anything to them. He just walks, and he lets the boy follow, and then he comes to the stupa where the relics of a Buddha are kept, and the sangha, or the monastic renunciates, the renunciate communities living, and they see the boy's there, and then it says he stoops down and he says to the boy, "I will give you 2 dumplings if you agree to first offer one of these dumplings and then receive one yourself." And the boy agrees to. So he gives him the dumplings, he makes the offering, and then receives one himself. And then there's a lot of things about how this makes Manjushri a great bodhisattva and then becomes incarnated this way, etc., etc. But think about that. Teach a person to fish, feed him for a day. Give a person a fish, feed them for a day. Teach them to fish, feed them for a lifetime. Right? Offer something to someone, and that moment of generosity which is revealed, it's beautiful. And it's real generosity. Allow someone to be generous also in their giving, and now for lifetimes the significance of that will be manifest. So I just encourage you thinking about both the way that you receive generosity and also offer generosity, but what is this generosity which opens the door to generosity? And here Manjushri was kind of fearless in that. And the boy wasn't going to beat him up or anything, but he could see in a different way. He's like, this isn't a beggar. This is a noble bodhisattva of the way. And his action can be reflective of that. How often we dodge that bullet, especially if we're doing a pretty good job ourselves. Right? We're doing a pretty good job ourselves. And we're kind of a little proud of that, probably. If you don't think you're very proud of it, look. Thank you. Yeah. Well, we should probably finish up. Yes.